The story begins in the famous Kimberly Magic Academy, a school of magic known for having a 20% death rate among its students. An incoming freshman named Oliver Horn walks to the school, and a magical flower tells him that a terrible future awaits him. On the way to the academy, Oliver meets the side characters, and one of them catches his eye. While everyone is dressed as bootleg Gryffindors, this girl is dressed as a samurai. She turns around, and Oliver realizes something, and thinks that fate brought her to him. The group arrives inside the academy grounds, and the ceremonial parade starts. There are unicorns, griffins, a golden Fafnir, and a troll that are walking in the parade. Everyone is in awe at the magical creatures, but one of the girls is sad to see that a troll is part of the parade. She believes it's wrong, but the boy with red hair thinks it's alright, since trolls can't speak the human language, and the wild ones attack people, so it's alright to enslave them for humanity's needs. They begin to argue, but the nerdy boy yells at them, and tells them to stop because he's reading. Oliver calms them down, and tells them they should get to know each other's names first, but suddenly a mage secretly casts a spell on a troll rights activist, causing her legs to move on their own, running toward the parade. Oliver and the others quickly run into action, as the troll casually stomps on one of the wolves that tried to attack him, and is heading toward the girl. But the Japanese transfer student arrives to save her, and yells at the troll to stop. She draws her sword and prepares to attack it. One of the mages tries to get the troll's attention using her magic, but it doesn't do anything. Oliver tells them to cast wind magic, and the trio does, causing a mini tornado. Oliver transforms the wind magic, and creates a fake dragon to scare the troll. The troll is confused, and the samurai girl attacks it. Her hair turns from purple to white, and Oliver recognizes this powerful technique called innocent color. The troll falls to the ground, and the group saves the troll activist. Everyone is safe, except for those poor wolves earlier. The samurai's white hair magically turns purple again, and thanks the group for distracting the troll. After the incident, the students gather in the main hall of the academy. The samurai girl shocks Oliver, and says she didn't have a plan when she soloed the troll. But Oliver thinks she has incredible potential, because innocent color means that the person has a massive amount of mana. A few seconds later, the headmistress arrives, and introduces herself as the headmistress Esmeralda. She apologizes for the incident, but tells the students that the next 7 years will basically be Fortnite. It's free-for-all and there are no revives, and Kimberly Magic Academy's reputation is built on the mountain of corpses of their past students. She says only the best mages will survive, and there are absolutely no refunds. After she warmly welcomes them, the headmistress snaps her finger, and sends the students to their buffet area. The group sits together, and begins introducing themselves. The blonde girl introduces herself as Michaela McFarlane, the eldest daughter of a powerful family of mages. The troll activist introduces herself as Katie Alto. She lives in the middle of nowhere, and their family runs a magical PETA organization. Guy Greenwood introduces himself, and says he's from a family of magical farmers, while Pete Reston comes from a family of muggles, and he managed to get one of the few non-magical spots in the school. Michaela is impressed, but Pete shuts her down and says he's not here to make friends. But Oliver compliments his book, and Pete gets excited, and tells him to introduce himself. Oliver comes from magical England, and also comes from a family of mages. He tells everyone that he has older siblings studying in the academy. Oliver tells the samurai she's next, and she introduces herself as Nanao Hibiya, and says she was born into a samurai family in magical Japan. She says she was about to die in a war when a man named McFarlane saved her. Michaela deduces that it's probably her own father, who serves as a part-time instructor at Kimberly. After the friends have introduced themselves, the group enjoys a joyful dinner together. The next day, Oliver wakes up before dawn. He wanders the school grounds when a mysterious voice talks to him. He readies his weapon, but the voice tells him he doesn't need to worry, as she is just a covert operative sent by his elder brother Gwyn to watch over him. Oliver asks for the operative's name, and the woman tells him it's Teresa Karst. Before leaving, she tells Oliver to call out her name in case he needs her, and disappears. As Oliver walks toward the fountain, he hears a familiar voice. When he looks at the fountain, he finds a topless Nanao bathing in the fountain's waters. Oliver immediately uses a spell to cover the entire area, preventing anyone from seeing Nanao's bare body. He yells at her for taking a bath in front of the men's dorm, but Nanao tells her she isn't bathing, she's actually purifying herself. Nanao tells him that she's purifying the blood of the last war she was in. He looks back at Nanao, and he recalls a memory of a blonde woman bathing in a river, telling him to look all he wants. As he snaps back to reality, Oliver gives his coat to Nanao so she can dry herself. He sees a normal girl in Nanao, but behind her innocent smile, he senses a secret covered in blood. Later that day, the group meets up for their first sword arts class. Professor Garland starts the class by asking about the origins of the sword arts. Pete answers perfectly, but the class thinks he's a teacher's pet and makes fun of him. Professor Garland says they will start their first class with a duel and asks for volunteers. Nanao raises her hand, and a student named Richard Andrews comes forward to challenge her. Oliver sees that Richard probably wants to make fun of Nanao and take advantage of her ignorance of the sword arts, so he raises his hands to duel her instead. Michaela follows suit, challenging Richards to a duel. Richard isn't happy about it, but Michaela tells him he must be scared, so he accepts. Oliver and Nanao prepare to duel, and the professor casts an anti-killing spell before signaling the start of the duel. Oliver thinks that Nanao's ignorance of the sword arts would be challenging for her, but Nanao's swordsmanship outclasses him. He slows her down with magic, but she forces Oliver into a defensive stance and repeatedly attacks him with her powerful strikes. Oliver realizes that she has killed people with her blade, when suddenly Nanao sheds tears, but Oliver tells her not to cry, and she thanks him. He decides he will end the battle with his next strike, and they lunge at each other, but Professor Garland stops the fight and says their bodies subconsciously broke the anti-killing spell. Seeing that the fight ended well, Michaela asks Garland if she can withdraw from the duel, since the fight proved to be a good lesson for the class. After the class, Nanao happily chases after Oliver and says she is sad it is that they weren't able to conclude properly, and asks Oliver to duel her again. Oliver thinks there is something is wrong with her, and he yells at her, stating that he'll never duel with her ever again, leaving her crying. Later that day the group gathers for lunch together, before heading back to their next class. Their next class is about magical biology, and their teacher is a crackhead. For their assignment, Professor Vanessa tells them to farm silk from the magical silkworms. She instructs them to feed the silkworms with magic to produce silkworms. But feed them too much, and they'll turn into monsters. Michaela tells Oliver to help Peter and Katie with their task, and she will help Nanao. At the end of the class, Katie accidentally fails her last cocoon. She tries to save it, but it turns into a deadly bee. Oliver and Michaela save her, but because they helped Katie, Vanessa deducts points from their grade. Katie apologizes for what happened, and tells Oliver about why she cares deeply for animals. She says that she's particularly close with a troll called Potter at home, and she views magical creatures differently than others. Oliver tells her it's alright, and she doesn't need to sweat it, because that's what friends do. Later that day, the covert operative ninja Teresa visits him again, informing him that she's going to visit Gwen's workshop, so she won't be around. At night, the group shares dinner together, and Pete informs them that he forgot his book from their previous class. Michaela and Oliver decide to accompany him, just to make sure he'll come out alive. There's labyrinth below the school that spawns at night, and it traps freshmen. Pete thinks the two mages are joking, but the scenery suddenly changes, and he realizes they were serious. They look around, and a suspicious woman greets them. She introduces herself as Ophelia Salvadori, a fourth-year student famous for her thesis about the study of interspecies breeding. She tries to charm Pete, and he begins to walk toward her, but Michaela manages to save him before he becomes a mindless puppet, and Oliver and Michaela try to run away with Pete. But a mage named Cyrus Rivermore appears, and blocks their way with his skeletal wall. He's a fifth-year student, but looks like he's in his 40s. They are trapped by the worst upperclassmen, and this spells trouble, no pun intended. Pete is visibly terrified as a non-magical, and tries to draw his sword, but Oliver stops him, saying he will only give them a reason to fight. The two students are rivals, and immediately throw insults at each other. Cyrus initiates the battle by summoning a skeletal creature, while Ophelia responds by birthing a literal whatever that thing is. The three friends use the fight as a means to escape, but Cyrus blocks their path once again. But all of a sudden, Nanao arrives, telling the group to run as fast as they can, because once she enters the battle, it's free-for-all. She immediately charges forward, trying to clash against her upperclassmen, but the student council president arrives to break up the fight. Student council president Alvin Godfrey introduces himself, alongside his femboy bodyguard, Carlos Withrow. The student council apologizes to them and leads them out of the labyrinth. Once outside, Oliver grabs Nanao's robes and yells at her, scolding her for charging into a battle she knows she can't win. Michaela tells Oliver to stop and asks her to explain her situation, so Nanao tells them about her past, stating how she was a samurai warrior who killed hundreds of people and the shogun's son accidentally. She was prepared to die when Michaela's dad appeared and took her into Kimberly as a mage. She says she lost attachment to life and wants to die honorably on the battlefield. So when she dueled against Oliver, she thought she could fulfill her dream. She longed for the perfect duel, and in her country, fighting and killing people who mutually respect each other is pure happiness. It's a twisted idea, but it is what she and her mentally deranged people believe in. So when Oliver refused her request to battle to their deaths again, she felt like she lost her reason to keep living. Tears fall down her face, and she tells everyone how bad she felt after Oliver turned down her request. To her, it's like she fell in love with Oliver, or rather his sword, because she genuinely felt happy fighting against him. Michaela expresses her admiration toward Nanao's beliefs, but tells her she can't allow people to randomly stab each other and feel happy about it, because that's not how people should think. Instead, she proposes to Nanao to find a new way of life, because killing your friends isn't the only way to live life. Nanao is moved by this, and Michaela tells her to focus on Oliver, with or without his sword. Oliver asks Nanao to promise him not to let herself get killed, no matter what. Their friends chime in and say they also don't want her to die. Nanao finally agrees, and the next day, she eyes Oliver like crazy. During their sword arts class, Garland tells them about a special type of magic called the Spellblade. According to him, a Spellblade is an unbeatable move. Currently, there are only 6 Spellblades in the world, and nobody knows who wields them. After the class, Richard challenges them once again, but this time he wants to battle with Oliver, so our protagonist goes along with it. But Nanao blurts out that Oliver is planning to throw the fight, and he should fight seriously, which causes Richard to get angry. Michaela breaks up the fight, and tells Oliver how it's her fault for turning Richard into an annoying side character. They grew up together, and were always compared to each other, but he sucked and she didn't, so he has to put gigantic wheels on his truck, if you know what I mean. A few minutes later, Pete arrives and shares some bad news. Katie is preventing a teacher from executing the same troll that almost killed her the other day. The teacher begins to torture her, but her friends arrive, and a 4th-year student named Milligan and Professor Garland convince the teacher to postpone the execution. The group is about to celebrate when a bat delivers a letter of challenge from Richard. He formally requests a duel between Nanao and Oliver in the labyrinth. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Reign of the 7 Spellblades. If you want to find out what happens next, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Panorama Anime, and comment for the next episode.